Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, well I took a little bit of a break and now what I'm going to do, I just reset out my colors again just like we did with the other lessons. This is my Naphtha Red Light, my Hansa Yellow, Pine Green, Burnt Sienna. These are my really warm colors. Phthalo Blue, which is a warm or slightly warm color, but it appears cool in these paintings because these are so warm. But I put that over here with the cool colors here, so Phthalo Blue and Red Violet. Then my neutrals, which are your black and your white right here. Got my 3/4 inch brush, and we're ready to go. Paper towels, value scale or something to help you look at value and colors. And then we'll start with this. So my board is prepped just like I showed you earlier. I'm going to take just a bit of extender down here into my brush, and I'm going to make a toned lighter yellow this time. So I'll take a little bit of Hansa Yellow and Burnt Sienna, and let's do kind of a lighter yellow color, and we'll let some of this dry down because we know it's going to dry down. So if I make a value here, about a value 8 here, so it's lighter than that, it's looks like about a 9, so it'll dry down to just about an 8. That'll be a pretty color here. And if I put some of this right over the board, I'll take a lot of this. You can leave some of it for, other color mixing and stuff if you want to do. But I love these. What we call contemporary looks. Now, you don't have to have this color into the background, but I sure do like contemporary looks where we have some of that. I can take my paper towel and soften it. If you really want to soften it out or blend it out, you can take a little water with that or a little extender. But I like to have something like that. It gives a nice look to it. This brush, once you have it like that, you can just leave it. We're done with it really for right now, unless you wanted to do what I do sometimes, which is optically put in some other colors. Let's take some Burnt Sienna and some Pine Green here. And this is what I like to do. Sometimes I strike it in there flat. Sometimes I strike it in there like this. So I get this. You can hear the brush running against the surface there. Change the tone slightly, get a little more green here. And let's put a little bit of red into that as well. Maybe right up here so we get some of those colors coming through. Sometimes after I do that, then I'll push through with my brush to the brush end of it here to soften some of that out. But I like this. This is a real good contemporary look. Now, this is me and my left brain stopping each time exactly the same place. So this, if you have that kind of habit too, you might want to take some of the color off an edge. That makes it prettier. And if I'm going to do a floral that pulls down, sometimes I pull a real long one down like this. And you can either soften that with your finger or pull the color like that. That gives a good long, what we call a vertical line into the painting. There's a lot of different ways and different looks that you can use, but if you're going to do the paint it simply like this, having some of these optical techniques are really pretty. Take a little bit of that yellow, work it into the edges there like that, and that's really pretty. You can break up what's really pretty in an optical one like this is take a little bit of blue and a little bit of light. Now, why? Because this all appears so warm. So this blue will appear cool and gives me just a nice color, refreshing color break. Because too many warm colors can appear kind of heavy. So we give this kind of refreshing, warm, cool color in there. Just kind of breaks that up, and look at the beautiful backgrounds that you can create. That makes a wonderful foundation now. In just a couple minutes, it makes a wonderful foundation for your flowers. So we'll have that. Now let's come in and let's decide. I'm going to do a couple of roses and maybe a blossom into this particular lesson. We know the roses are a set of circles. Let's take a bit of our Burnt Sienna. And if you want to, you can, take a palette knife, or you can take your brush and push some of these colors up. I like to leave them here so I can look at them, and I might touch into them and help them dirty brushes and stuff later on. But let's take our flat brush here, okay, and we can like our number 8 here, and I've done a lot of painting with that. You could also use your little filbert. If you're working on a smaller one, you could use your small blossoms, which we do in some of the other ones. We use the flat. The round brush here I use for detailing in some of the lessons, and especially into birds and stems and scrolls and stuff like that. I use my round brush. I don't use it on larger flowers though. But let's come in here. Let's say, okay, so we have a flower here and a rose, and let's just put in a smaller round to kind of oval shape right here. And this is what you do to draw your composition. This is what I do. I just kind of size it out here, and I'll push this out just a bit. I like to push the colors so I get these blurry edges to the colors, and they start to dry real fast, and that's what I like in the acrylics, because I don't like to get too much buildup of color like what you would get into an oils, and then it becomes difficult to paint because the colors just kind of get lost. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to put the gaze of the flower on here. Let's just put a little bit of this burnt sienna right in here. Now we will put the cooler color in that center, but that helps us just very softly see the gaze of the flower here that we might want to have. And so that sits there. The question now becomes, do we want to have another blossom? Maybe a little blossom sits here off to its side. So I put kind of an oval shape. And we know with all the blossoms and daisies we paint, we've got movement that goes in and out of the center like this, right? So if I'm just pushing in some color, that's kind of what I want to have. There's the movement there. Just pushing in an oval, push in and out of the center. And it's an oval, so it's longer on the side, so that the flower will turn. If you do it round, it faces you. So if I come in here and say, okay, I'm going to put more of a rounding shape right here, that flower's kind of facing you. And then maybe we'll have some smaller little blossoms right down through here. I'll just kind of dribble a little color. I'm not sure yet. Now see, I haven't painted this before. You're watching me create. This is the creative process that I use. Maybe I'll put a few of those little blossoms right out there, maybe a little bit right here. So I have an idea. I have an idea, but I'm not super perfect with it at all here. Okay, so roses and a blossom. Now we have the yellow, having a rose that is maybe a white rose to some violet or something would be pretty. So I'll take some red violet right down here. Let's push that in. Let's lighten that just a bit. So this is what it'll look like in the lighter versions. But to make a rose, remember what we said in the first lesson of the rose. A rose is a set of 3 circles. So I really like to take my dark color. I'll put that in my brush like this. I'll start right where I want the deepest part of my rose. I make a little circle with my brush, and then I just lift. I don't push down very hard now, and I lift the pressure coming out here like that, just opening that up. And I can even just run my finger over that, just a touch there, and keep that dark. We're going to have even more, but I want to get that nice big dollop there of red violet right into the center of that rose. And let's come down here. Here would be the shadow side. So if I bring, because I have light coming this way, it's lighter on this side of the board than it is here. So I'll bring my violets and stuff down here like this. Okay, and so I get a shadow side to it. While that violet's kind of wet, I'm going to touch a little bit into that blossom, a little bit into that. We'll even take a little bit. I'm just going to add a touch of extender here just to keep it wet. I don't want to use very much because I want this paint to dry. I don't like the paint to stay wet for very long. Okay, now let's lighten this violet up. A couple values. So violet comes in here, down in here like a 2, and so I want to go up here like a 4 or so, a little bit lighter. And I'll push some of that lighter violet right in here onto the, right as it heads to the warm side. So what I really have in a flower when I'm painting this is a warm side coming from my yellow and a cool side. And I can push a little bit of that violet out here into my blossoms, maybe a little bit of that into here. It's just a nice carrying color here. And we'll push that around here. Now, so I got a warm side and a cool side is what I'm developing. So the warm side of my rose, right over here, I'll just run right up. I don't even clean my brush. I just pinch wipe off the violet. And I'll come right up here and we'll pick up some yellows here and really define the warm side. Maybe a little bit of warmth here. Push that around with your finger. Push the color around so you have a warm side and a shadow side. And this is what I like to do. And that this is what we call the underpainting, the undertone colors of what it is you're painting. We'll be doing a lot of painting with light value colors here, but this kind of sets the tone, the light tone of it. I'm going to take a little bit of that violet, push it out over here for some of them little blossomy flowers. That'll be pretty right out there. And I know it looks, a lot of people think, oh God, they try to make it look perfect. I don't. I like these edges to be rough. I like them to be out and, nothing super smooth or perfect. I want everything kind of rough. And I want some different tones. Here's a little Hansa. I'm just going to push that Hansa right into here, right into that flower. Don't stroke it too many times because this is really wet here right now. It'll blend down and I don't want it to blend in there. I just want to get some Hansa in there. Here we'll push just a little bit of that Hansa there. A little bit into here, which would be the center. And like I say, I paint back and forth several times, but it's getting it nice and loose like this that really makes it pretty. Now, we could also, dump in a little bit of that blue from our background. We can touch a little bit of that. Without creating a big rainbow in your painting, what you're doing is you're carrying color. And this is what the artist does in their initial setup. Now, some of that's just all going to paint out and disappear. But some of it might stay all the way to the end. Let's pinch wipe our brush. Take out that extra. Let's come right over here towards our nice warms and our light. We'll go almost up to a 10, maybe down to about a value 8 or so here, maybe a 9. And I'm going to strike that right across the front of the flower. That sets the nice tone. Now, like I said before, this is the stroke. Now, you can push it while it's wet like that, or even if it's dry, you can push it and blend it in. Or you can come up and create a half tone, something that's in between those two, and strike that onto the edge. What you don't want to do is strike it or stroke it or move it, too many times, because it'll all become one color. So strike that heavy, heavy color there. Let's get the light on there a couple of times. I'll even pinch wipe my brush here and just take it off a little bit here. Just strike it off. Now, if that starts to dry on you, you can push with your finger. If that is still really dry, grab a little yellow and put it in there. But see that streak? Leave those streaks. That makes beautiful roses, those streaks. Let's come out here and let's push a little bit of that right out to what we call the reaching petal, the petal that leaves the bowl, reaches out into the sky here. And I'll push in and out a little bit. Now my color is getting really thick and heavy in here, and that makes it sometimes difficult to paint, so I'll let that tack up for a little bit. We'll put a few more petals on just to get the shape of this rose here out like this, and that might collide too much with that. I want to see this blossom here up on top of that. So what I'm going to do is push that on. So, and a good way to do it is just put that on and then push the blossom shape right up on top of it. So that blossom will go in there a little bit heavier there. And as you go down here, though, I'm going to pick up just a touch of extender. As you go down, let's loosen this up. If it's dry, just take a little bit more paint and light. Let's loosen this up, and let's head this yellow over to the cool side here, a bit more to the cool side, painting in and out like that, and get that lighter cool side there. Let's pick up a little bit of that, maybe a bit of yellow, so you're coming right in between the two, and let's just push some of this right over here onto this side, here like that. Okay, so we set that one up as well. I'm going to let that, I'm going to get a fresh paper towel here. I'm going to let that tack up for a minute. We're going to take some white here, maybe in some of these blues and greens, and these make a more neutral color here. blues and greens and yellows. It's tertiary, makes the more neutral color. Let's establish kind of the blossom. We could do daisies or a blossom here with a lot of little petals in and out here. Just pull that around here like that. Just get some of that shape. Sometimes I pull the petals out like that and leave those. And sometimes I, stroke them and leave them heavier. So I always vary that. Let's pull some of this in. I'll let this blossom. Just get some differences into your strokes there. Just let this be a nice jaggedy edge blossom here. Sometimes I pull out. Especially if I'm on the shadow side, I'll pull out. And you can also put a little bit of violet into that shadow side there. And then we'll come right around here towards the front of this one here. That's turning back. And we'll pull in and out. So you see I push with my finger and the paint starts to dry up, and when I push a little harder. You can also stroke with the brush. And that works very nice as well. Let's put just a few little touches, just so we can get kind of an idea or impression here of some of the little bits of movement we might want to have back out here on these softer little flowers here as well. All right, so this in the center here starting to tack up a bit, so I can take a bit of my yellow and violet and white, just slightly lighter than what is in there before, and curve it around a bit. Just push it around, just push that, and I hit that white and grab that, and that's fine. And it's sometimes when you're painting this casual, things like this happen. I'll grab a little white right on the chisel edge of the brush, and you can just draw it around and push it around. What I'm looking for is just that rounding movement there, right? That nice rounding movement that's just real pretty in the into the flowers like that. And sometimes I will, before I go too much further, I'll come in here and establish some of my stem lines and stem movements back and forth. A little bit of my pine green and burnt sienna here is nice, and to have that in there, that works really well. Sometimes I'll take that pine green burnt sienna right into a rose like this, push that in there so I can get some transparency looks to the flowers or to the blossoms here. I like some of that, especially if I'm doing more contemporary stuff. I like to do that. Just drag that through in there just to break up some of that solidness of the color. That gives you a nice look through there. Okay. Now, do we want to have more yellow? We can look, do we want to have more yellow into this flower? Do we want to go more with an orange? Take a lighter orange color's pretty, especially orange with a bit of that green in there. That's a beautiful color to put into a rose as well. And as you paint your roses, over the years and practice, you'll get all different kinds of colors that you like. And and then if you're like me, a production painter, you get all kinds of colors that your customers, your clients, your collectors like, and I keep notes of those, which ones they like. And so it's if you're a selling artist, you don't paint for yourself, you paint for other people. Let's put a little bit of cool color back inside that, there like that, and that looks kind of nice. I'm just looking for variation, see? And this is a building process, like everything else, like all the others. It's a nice, beautiful building process here. Now, I'm going to, before I go too much further here with this, I'll take a little of that orange that warms this white right here, see? And I'll pick up quite a bit of paint here. And I'm going to set the forward petal on this blossom, because I want this blossom right here to really kind of be on top of this this rose right there, because I think I'm going to set that rose behind just a bit, and then we'll strike one or two more lights here, in and out, push in and out of that. See that movement and those other little strikes there? That's what makes it pretty. Then we'll pick up just on the edge like this, and we'll do just a couple of little hits here. A little, what we call the sparks in contemporary painting, little sparks of color, see? And let's do it on this one as well. Here, we'll put that light in right there. Just quick and lift off. Vary the color a little bit. Add just a touch of yellow, a little bit of warmth to it. You know, you can stroke this with the flat and then turn around and use your filbert as well. If you find that all your strokes, all your touches are exactly the same, you know, I roll the brush. I get different edges and stuff like that to it. I'm constantly rolling, pushing, moving my brush so I don't paint too long with one particular edge. But you can do that. And let's just set a few little lights and darks. Maybe pull out like this so that petal looks like it's coming out slightly like that. All kinds of ways, but we like this nice variation to it. We can push a little bit of that violet in there. That's pretty. A little bit of that violet in there. It's a pretty little color. Goes in there, and you can hit those little lights right on top of that again. You get that nice variation. See all the layers of color now that are showing up. Let's grab a little water, a little extender, loosen that up, starting to dry down here. Loosen that up and push some of that violet here back down into this cool part right in there as well. And let's come back and set this rose back in again. Let's take some of this light color and set some of this rose. So we'll collide those two right there. This is thick, thick paint now. And so it's a little thicker than what I did on the first rose. They're a little different. You always got to try something different. Now, I like everything there, but that light right there is kind of to the outside there. It's kind of flattening out the rose. So I'll just take something a little darker and just go right through and lift that light off. Right there where I don't want it. Okay? Paint slow. Don't get too fast, because then your strokes, you'll get your colors just too opaque. Be a little bit planned. We want light up here at this top part here, and we want to see it coming into like the bowl of the rose. That's what makes the pretty rose. It's coming in. You always got to see that bowl. Always remember that. That bowl is the shape of the rose. That's the foundation of the rose. So we want to do that. Now, let's cool this down just a bit and continue on down this side of the rose. Let's open this rose up a bit just by instead of, if I wanted to close it, I would stroke like that. If I wanted to open it, I would open up the rose this way like this and pull right back down into that center. Now, that's too much of a contrast there. So I can push in and out with my finger, or I can take some of my pink color and just move that in and out there like that. And that makes a pretty little opening to the rose. Now, I might want to have one or two extra little movements in there, little edges, little corners of your brush with some light color that just kind of move the rose around. But, you know, the easiest way to paint a rose is to manipulate it with the dark. So you put that light on and then come back with some of your dark and you make it really pretty. See, the dark paints out the light really easy. So if I want to come back in here now with just a bit of my red violet and restate and suggest the bottom of my bowl, that one shadow that's very important here, just pull that right through like that. That's what makes the rose really pretty. Here, let's put just a touch or two of a light petal maybe right there. And then I'm going to build even more light, more color here. Let's build this up and get this nice light tone right in there to that rose. Let's build a little bit more light here. Now I can, if I feel that I've lost some of my yellow, I can streak my yellow again, stroke that in. You can pull some petals in like this or pull some out here. Let's just pull a few out, in and out here. And you know, I get these little flat edges sometimes that I just take off. I just use my brush and just take off. If you lost some of your shadow, just take some of your shadow and lift back out here and push that shadow back in there. I want to soften this rose and push to this blossom. That's what the blossom is, what I want on top. So I'll stroke that again. But again, if you lost some of that orange or some of that yellow, you can just come back in and just strike a little bit of that into the flower here. And the color gets really heavy. And if it gets too hard to paint, this is the thing you got to remember. You can get these acrylics so thick, and it's very, very thick here, that it just stays wet for so long and it gets difficult to paint. Then you just go away for just 2 or 3 minutes, let it tack up, and then it'll get easier to paint again. So, we paint with strikes of color and values here. I don't blend. So if you notice, each time I'm taking a color and stuff, I'm only stroking it or moving it once or twice. I don't blend with it. I don't blend very much. I'm going to take that dark down in here a little bit more, and see, I just reset that whole center there just with the dark. I can manipulate that center really pretty here. A little bit more of that shadow in there. And the more times I do this, the prettier the rose gets as far as depth. And don't forget to leave a nice darker, just more opaque stroke of it in there. That really gets nice color. But that's a real contrast there. So maybe I'll take a little bit of my orangey kind of color here and just stroke along the edge of that and soften that out. But that's real pretty color in there. Let's take a little bit of that yellowy orange and some violet, some light, and just suggest, just a little bit light here, just suggest some of these back petals back here that might be into the rose here. So it's a building process. Anybody can do this. It's a building process. Will you do it your very first time? Oh, heck no. If you do, you got really lucky. If you're new to this kind of thing, it's going to take you painting 5 or 6 times on this rose to quit playing in it and to get the confidence to see it. What you got to do is you got to practice it several times so you can get the confidence to see it. See the 3 circles, and then paint the light. When you get lighter, you get smaller. These are all good rules. We learn these rules in color theory and other things that we study, but these are all good rules. I'll just paint this light just a little lighter, a little smaller here. I just want a bit of that light moving in there. But it's an application. These are beautiful flowers. There's lots of painted simply flowers. But these are just beautiful little flowers to paint, and I just paint smaller and smaller. And I'm having to touch really light here because there's a lot of paint and it's really wet. And I don't want to blend too much. And if I took that violet out too much, I put it back in. I go back and forth. That's the fun part about the painting like this. You go back and forth. And, I used to, in the old days when I did a lot of the other techniques, once you put a color on, you couldn't go back and touch it. And today, boy, we touch it and touch it and touch it. If I want to soften some of this out so I can get another petal in there, I just push harder, a little bit harder, and work the brush just a bit, and I create a softer area that allows me to come in here and set like another petal in there, just like that. Or I can pull it out just a bit and set the look of another petal into that rose. Excuse me. And then I'll take a bit of that red violet in my brush and just touch and lift off here, just like that, and leave that. And these are the prettiest, I feel, kinds of flowers when you leave them really kind of chunky and heavy color like this. Now let's put this blossom right back up on top of there, pure white there. Pull that down, put that blossom right up on top. If I feel I need to shadow this rose a little bit, then I'll take some darker color and just pull in and out of a touch like this until I see that blossom is really going to go up on top of this rose here. So I'll just lift up and down a couple of times here. And then I can adjust the rose so that the blossom sits on top. And again, if you're new to painting, this will take practice to be able to work your colors that hard. But it is a pretty look, and you can do it because there's nothing difficult about this. It's just a building process of color. And you know that the bottom of the rose has to round. See the round shape in through here. And if you can't see it clearly, take just a touch of your dark and define it just a bit where the viewer can see it, and it'll look more like a rose. And let's build this up here into the center just a touch more. Here like that. That makes a pretty, that's a pretty soft, fun little rose like that. Let's put a little dark right in here. A little bit of our burnt sienna into that center. Let's put a darker shadow, red violet, high contrast red violet in there. That's pretty. Right in there like that. That's nice. Let's take some of our yellow, Hansa yellow, tap while that's wet. We'll tap right into that here on this side and let it run right, tapping right into those shadows and softening out. Just a little bit of it expresses. Then we can tap it softly up through here. Okay. So pick up that nice heavy corner of, nice textured heavy corner of it. Start up on the light where there's none of that burnt sienna and red violet. Tap heavy, that gives you your light side. Then as you just lightly tap down here, the color, the Hansa yellow gets eaten up by the red violet and the burnt sienna. Then you can come back around to the other side, but that puts a nice light side really easy right up here onto this side here. And like I said with some of the others, sometimes I like to incorporate that, so I'll take some light color and I'll push in and out here just on that edge. Let some of those different colors hit into that blossom there, and you get a different look to your blossom. Now, if you take away all the shadow, you can just tap in a little burnt sienna, but that gives you a pretty little touch. See that when you incorporate like that, some different things happen where you hit other colors, and that gives a movement. So see, right now it's a little stiff, so I'll take just a little bit of the light and I'm going to push in and out of that right there, and what happens happens. So I get this beautiful movement of color in and out of the blossom on that side. And if I want more shadow, I can just come back in and touch more shadow here. If I want to express the light a little bit lighter, I can come right in here and touch a light and get that nice, really light, heavy touch of texture and color right there, and really put a petal right there up on top of that one. It's very pretty. So, you know, I could build the rose a little bit more, but I kind of like the rose the way it is here. Some of this is dried down here, so I'll take just a little bit of my red violet. Maybe I want to just sneak in here with the corner brush. And if you're brand new to it, and you have to do something small in there, go grab your number 4. This is what your number 4 is also good for. Just come in there with a little bit of smaller touches like this with that 4, so you don't have to use that big brush, and just work a few little touches, a little details. This is what a lot of the artists and stuff do today. If they get into detail work, they'll paint in big with the big brush, and then they'll get some detail work here with the small brush that allow them to put extra little petals or extra little movements or so. Or say I want to come in here and add a little an extra turn here of some violet around like that, so that that center of that rose gets more of a petal shape there. You can do it with both light and both dark, and it's pretty. So you can use the small brush in like this just to detail it up. So like in the first rose that we painted in the lessons there, I used only the big brush, but you can use the small brush in detailing. That small brush can come in here and detail anything. I can put in just a few streaks of light with it like this, the detail strokes of it. And this is what a lot of artists, you know, they paint with the big brush for as long as they can, and then they just go in and add a few little detail touches and stuff with the smaller brush. And you could use this for, you know, smaller blossoms too. Let's say we want to get some of these beautiful little light, let's go just a touch more warm red into this too, almost like an orange here. Let's put some of that in because we haven't used that color yet. And you can, so we have some cools, and we can come in here and touch a few little light colors right in like that, just to make a little spray of some other kind of little flowers there. Maybe a bit lighter right up here onto the light side. So So this is on just using the little 4. I can also use the big brush, and they'll make slightly different ones. But just give a few little petals like this to it. Just touch and lift off, and then you can soften it with your finger, or just give it a little whisper of a color here. And let's put a few of those right over here. This is really dry, so they'll really stand out quite a bit over here. And sometimes I let that happen. Like I'm going to let it happen here. The colors will be a little bit drier and stand out. I'll push them around so this gets a bit lost. That's the contemporary look of it that I love into the flower. So it's not so perfect. You get these colors tracking around. What we call representational art. You're painting just a representation of flowers and blossoms and stuff. You're not making anything perfect. I'm going to take some color down here, and let's make this just a little light, maybe a bit of our yellows into this. Here, gray this up just a bit, and let's just put a downside blossom right down here. That's just going to pull down. So this blossom is not going to be open. So it's like a V shape, so it's not open. And it's not as light as that, but I will put a couple strokes just real quick of just some light color like this, just to suggest it there. Pull that out. Let it be very, very casual like that. Just let what happens happen. Don't stroke it too many times. It'll all blend up, and then it's all the same, and it loses its interest. Now let's just put a little idea of a calyx. You can't see that too much. Little pine green and a little burnt sienna. We'll put some light color on it here in just a second, but that helps. Now remember what I also said. If you really want to increase the contrast in something, earlier on, take a little of dark color. This is your pine green and some red violet. The red violet cools it down, darkens it down. This I can come in here like this and negative paint. We paint right around to help shape up. Maybe I want to really bring this blossom up or this rose up in contrast just a bit. So I just tap that. Now you can also do this with the small little brush. If you have a hard time sneaking the corner of this big brush in there, but you can do that with the smaller brush. But when you're doing it, it's like, which is better? You can use the small brush. We have it here for you to use the small brush. That makes it easier. But I want you to practice using the large brush, because the larger brush makes a less controlled stroke, and that is where you get that contemporary look to it, okay? And it breaks it up a bit more, and that's the look that we really want to go for in the contemporary type of look of painting this. I'll put some of that dark out there like that. Doesn't that make a pretty little floral like this? And of course, I love the broken colors of it here. Now, we can, of course, add more things, more stuff, more lines. And sometimes if I'm down here with the darks, I'll add some movement lines of those dark colors and stuff coming out here like this. Just break that up a bit. Push some of those colors out and stuff. We can add some more blossoms and everything in there. We can add just other strokes of color and movement here. Maybe there's something else there. You don't know what it is, and I just break it up and just move something in there, and that just gives you the idea something's there. The viewer will see what it is that they need to see. You don't need to make anything perfect in there. And that's what, so many artists get in there and try to paint perfect, and it doesn't really need to be there. You don't, one of the things that I read, it was really fantastic, and I said it a little earlier in one of the other videos. Don't rob the viewer of their imagination. Don't paint the darn thing perfect, and then the viewer can't use their imagination to see what they think they see. Now I'm going to take a bit of those greens and my tone colors here, add a bit of light to this. I'm going to use just a touch of extender in this. I mostly do this most of the time with water, but I'll use a little extender here. And I'm going to make those leaves with the 3 strokes. 1, 2, 3. Kind of shape that leaf up there. Kind of pick the light side and just pull back just ever so lightly so I get a little bit of a haze right there with it. That makes a pretty leaf. Let's make this one just a touch darker here. Pull out to this side. 1, 2, and then slightly shorter and curve that around. And then just let that sit for a second. Make sure your finger's kind of clean. Touch it and lift off. And it just pulls that light onto that one side there. Nice, simple way to make the Paint It Simply leaves. Let's add a couple of smaller ones over here. And push those around. Just get a... It's nice in a composition like this, a casual composition, to get a few leaves that are a little closer to, perfect little flower leaves. More of the oval shape. And then you have this nice, loose, very loose contemporary look. I like that as well. Let's get a little green, touch of the red violet, push a bit of that over here, push a bit of that out. Just kind of loosens it all up here. I like that. If I have roses in a composition, sometimes I'll make the stem a little wider. And like I showed you before, I like to take a touch of burnt sienna on the edge and give it like a little rose thorn right there, like that, somewhere in there. That just gives a nice look to them. Now we can lighten up. We can lighten up in our composition here some of the colors. I'm going to just go my greens right into my pinks here, like this, and just put a stroke or two right in there like that. That'll give you the feeling of a lighter green in there, but it's a nice harmonious green because it has this pink from our rose and stuff in it, which helps tone it and soften it. We'll push it in there just a bit in a few places and around a few places, a few colorings here. Little touches. This is what I like. It's just little touches to break it up. You can, if you can't see the calyx on that flower, you can get that a little bit more. Or use the chisel here and give the idea of a nice stem right there coming, out of that. Push it around. Use your finger to push it and distort it, what we call blur the edges. That's what I like. Maybe I'll take that light. You can do light or dark, but maybe I'll take that light and just give the impression of a light. Maybe sometimes I hit it in there too, but an impression of a light stem in there like that. Makes a pretty little thing. Now, we can come back in and when you're painting like this, you can come back in and add your final centers and stuff like that, or final lights and stuff. And you can, these little blossoms here, you can use your small number 4. It's really easy. I like to just use the corner of my bigger brush. And why? Because it's not perfect. I don't like these to be perfect. So you can get a lot of contrast to these. You could go green centers. You can go burnt siennas. You could go red violets with and a little touch of the yellow on it, or light green. There's lots of little blossoms. Can be all kinds of things. But I'm just going to go very simple here, because this is Paint It Simply. Just tap in a little bit of my yellow. That'll make them pretty, a little different here. Tap in a bit of my yellow here, like this. Around this is kind of pretty. This one goes around there like that. And little bits, and you can add little sparks of those colors through. That makes it kind of pretty, the little sparks. Incorporate those too. Take some of this with some light and just touch the edges of those. Just touch the edges. Incorporate some of that into the flower to soften it out just a touch. That's a little, well, that's not really too bad. But if I just put a bit more contrast in there, just 1 or 2 little soft. This is what the artist looks like. See, that dot is just a bit sharp. So I'll just take off with just a touch of that base color. Just incorporate that just a bit. I'll look through what might look a little bit harsh. That takes away from the beauty of the entire design. I don't want to get rid of the contrast, the differences of the color. I'll just take it off just a touch like that, and it makes a pretty painting. So there you have a nice one, I think. I wouldn't probably do too much. You could put a few more lights into it, but I like the warmth, the richness of it, and it's playing against the cool colors. It's a building process, okay? A building process of color. Now, if anything starts to get difficult to paint, then let it tack up a bit, okay? And remember, when you put a stroke down of a light color, you put a stroke down. And you can push it to soften it, or you make a value that is just slightly darker and put it onto its side. So if I put a light stroke that's right here on top of this, and I want to soften that, I don't even have to have the blue there softened. I can just take any kind of color that is closer to the blue in value and set it right along the side there like that, and you can see I strike that softening. And if I don't want it to be, and this is what artists look for, if they don't want it to be quite so streaky there, we'll sometimes pull across the other way to get rid of that strike. And that's all it is how many times, that's up to you, how many times you're going to strike something. But the more you strike it, the softer it gets. But we don't always like that. Like, see that big difference that's right there in that rose? It's kind of fitting in there. And so sometimes leaving those is going to be great. Now, a lot of people say, is this too difficult or something for a beginner? I don't think so, because I've been, like I said before in other videos, I've been teaching a long time. And you've got to start someplace. And I always say, here's your goal. Don't start out here, because here's your goal. And I used to always start out everybody with lots of really easy stuff, and then they develop really bad habits that gets difficult to break later on in their painting career. So let's treat this like portrait painters do. You start right with them, and then you develop it. And of course, it'll take practice. I'm going to put just a bit more light right there on that edge. Now I have to ask myself, do I soften that edge? Maybe I take just a bit of pink and just stroke a little bit right there. Maybe just a touch right there. And then I'll leave that. Where do you know where to put those colors? That's going to come with time. That's going to come with time and developing your technique, developing your particular way. But it all depends on, do I see it advance enough? Do I see this up on top enough of that rose? And remember, we're painting acrylic, and acrylic dries down just a little darker. So it doesn't hurt anything to let this dry for about an hour and come back and just hit a few areas of sparks of light. That will help it, okay? All right, there you go. There's the next one. And we'll paint another one, and then you go back and paint them all again, and practice and practice and practice, okay? All right, I'll see you on the next one.